You probably worked a night shift before. Maybe you're working one right now. You know that feeling when it's 3 a.m. and you're the only person in the building, when every shadow seems to move and every sound makes you jump. You tell yourself it's just your imagination, just the stress of being alone in the dark. But what if your imagination isn't playing tricks on you at all? Welcome back to the channel. Everyone, if you're settling in for another spine-chilling journey into the unknown, please hit that like button if you feel comfortable, and don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying tales from the shadows. I'm genuinely curious. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your location and the time in the comments below. Whether you're joining us from New York at midnight, London in the early hours, or somewhere across the globe, it's always a pleasure to know where our brave viewers are tuning in from around the world. Now, let's dive into 3 absolutely terrifying night shift horror stories that will make you question whether working alone in the dark is ever truly safe. Justin O'Brien thought he'd hit the jackpot when he got hired at Mel's All-Night Diner on Highway 34. The pay was decent, the work was simple, and his co-worker Karen seemed friendly enough during the day shift orientation. What they didn't tell him was why the previous night cook had quit so suddenly, leaving behind a note that simply read, "The customers aren't what they seem." It was Justin's 3rd night on the job when he first noticed something strange. At exactly 2:33 a.m., an elderly man in a worn gray coat walked through the front door. He ordered black coffee and apple pie, paid with exact change, and sat in the corner booth reading a newspaper from 1987. Nothing too unusual for a late-night diner, except Justin could swear the man hadn't been there when he looked up from the grill 30 seconds earlier. "Don't worry about Harold," Karen said when Justin mentioned it during their shift change. "He's harmless. Just don't talk to him too much, okay?" The next night, Harold appeared again at 2:33 a.m. sharp. Same order, same newspaper, same corner booth. But this time, Justin noticed something that made his skin crawl. Harold cast no reflection in the chrome surface of the coffee machine. By the 4th night, Justin was ready. He positioned himself at the counter with a clear view of the door, determined to see how Harold entered. At 2:32 a.m., the corner booth was empty. At 2:33 a.m., Harold was sitting there with his coffee and pie, as if he'd been there all along. "How did you get in here?" Justin called out, his voice shaking. Harold looked up from his newspaper with hollow, black eyes. "Same way I always do, son. Same way I always will." That's when Justin realized a horrible truth. The newspaper Harold was reading had today's date, but the headline read, "Local cook dies in diner fire." Below it was a photograph of Justin himself, standing in the very kitchen where he was working. Harold smiled, revealing teeth like broken glass. "You're early tonight, Justin. Usually new employees don't see me until their 2nd week." Justin's hands shook as he gripped the edge of the counter. The fluorescent lights above started stuttering, that annoying electrical buzz getting louder and more erratic. He glanced toward the windows and his stomach dropped. Cars were pulling into the lot. Not just 1 or 2, but dozens of them. A beat-up Chevy Nova from the 70s, paint peeling and rust eating through the doors. A minivan with its entire front end caved in, the windshield spider web with cracks. An old Ford pickup that looked like it had been sitting in a junkyard for 20 years. But nobody was getting out. The door chime kept ringing. Asterisk ding, ding, ding asterisk, like someone was walking in and out constantly. Justin turned around and nearly fell backward. The diner was packed. Every booth, every stool at the counter. Where the hell had they all come from? There was a woman in what used to be a white dress, now stained dark red down the front. She sat hunched over, her long hair hanging in her face. Next to her, a guy in a construction uniform had his head tilted at an angle that made Justin's neck hurt just looking at it. At the far table, 3 kids, couldn't be older than 10, sat with their small hands wrapped around coffee cups, angry red marks covering their forearms like they'd been grabbed too hard. "Coffee and pie," the woman mumbled without looking up. "Same," said the construction worker. "Us too," whispered the children in unison. Justin's training kicked in automatically. Pour coffee, cut pie, take money, but his hands were trembling so badly he could barely hold the pot. Each customer placed exact change on the counter. Quarters and dimes that looked old, tarnished. And they all had newspapers spread in front of them. Real newspapers, not the usual day-old copies. These looked fresh, crisp. He caught a glimpse of one headline. Local woman dies in wedding day crash. Below it was a photo of the woman in the blood-stained dress, smiling in what looked like an engagement photo. "You're doing great, son," Harold said from his corner booth. But his voice sounded different now, deeper, like it was coming from somewhere far away, just like all the others who worked the night shift here. Justin looked down at Harold's newspaper. The headline read, "Diner cook perishes in grease fire, body found by morning staff." The photo underneath was of Justin himself. "No, no, no," Justin whispered, backing toward the kitchen. "This isn't real. This can't be real." But the smell hit him then, smoke, thick and acrid. He spun around and saw flames crawling up the wall behind the grill. Real flames, real heat. The grease in the fryer was bubbling and spitting, sending sparks in every direction. Justin ran for the back door, his sneakers slipping on the tile floor. He crashed into the exit, throwing his full weight against it. Nothing. The door was stuck solid, like someone had nailed it shut from the outside. The fire was spreading fast now, consuming the kitchen equipment, the walls, everything. "Help me!" he screamed. But when he turned around, all the customers were just sitting there, calmly eating their pie while flames licked at the ceiling above them. They didn't even seem to notice the smoke. The heat was unbearable. Justin's eyes watered, his lungs burned. He fell to his knees, gasping, and the last thing he saw was Harold folding up his newspaper. The headline now read, "Night cook joins diner's permanent staff." Karen's keys jingled as she unlocked the front door at 6 a.m. The diner looked exactly the same as always. Clean counters, fresh coffee ready to brew, no scorch marks, no smell of smoke. Nothing out of place except for a folded piece of paper by the register. She recognized Justin's handwriting immediately. Had to leave town. Family emergency. The customers aren't what they seem. Don't work alone. Jay. Karen stared at the note, then glanced around the empty diner. She'd been working here for 3 years, and this was the fourth night cook who'd quit without notice. Always the same story. Always the same cryptic note. Patrick thought he'd finally caught a break when he got the job at Morrison's 24-hour pharmacy. After years of dead-end retail jobs, being a night shift pharmacy technician seemed like a step up. The pay was decent. The work was straightforward, and his supervisor Betty assured him that nights were usually quiet. Just fill prescriptions, handle the occasional emergency refill, and keep the place secure, she'd said. "Oh, and if anyone comes in asking for the special delivery, just tell them we're out of stock." Patrick didn't think much of it at first. Every pharmacy had weird customers and inside jokes. It was his second week when the first delivery request came in. The automated system chimed at exactly 11:47 p.m., displaying a prescription that made Patrick's blood run cold. Patient, Diane Hartwell. Medication, morphine 100 milligrams. Quantity, 30 tablets. Special instructions, terminal patient. Deliver to room 237, Willowbrook Cemetery. Rush order. Patrick stared at the screen. A cemetery? That had to be a mistake. He called Betty at home. "Oh, that," Betty said, her voice tight. "Just ignore those orders. They're system glitches. We've been trying to get IT to fix it for months." But the orders kept coming. Every night, between 11:47 p.m. and 12:15 a.m., the system would generate prescriptions for patients with addresses at Willowbrook Cemetery. Always high-dose pain medications. Always marked as rush orders. And always for people who, according to dates, had died decades ago. On Thursday night, Patrick decided to investigate. He looked up Diane Hartwell in the system archives. She'd been a regular customer in 1987, coming in monthly for cancer medications. The last entry in her file was dated October 15th, 1987. Patient deceased. Final prescription unfilled. That's when Patrick noticed something else. Every single one of these midnight orders was for patients who had died before receiving their final prescription. People who had passed away in pain, waiting for medication that never came. "We have to help them," he muttered to himself, then immediately felt foolish. Help who? They were dead. But Friday night, everything changed. The delivery request came through as usual. Julie Valdez, fentanyl patches, delivered to plot 142A, Willowbrook Cemetery. This time, Patrick didn't hesitate. He filled the prescription, grabbed his keys, and drove to the cemetery. Willowbrook was old, dating back to the 1800s. The rusty gates were chained shut, but there was a gap just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Patrick's flashlight beam danced across weathered headstones as he searched for plot 142A. He found it near the back under a massive oak tree. The headstone was simple. Julie Valdez, 1962 to 1989. Beloved mother. She fought bravely. Patrick knelt down and placed the medication beside the headstone. "I'm sorry you had to wait so long," he whispered, feeling ridiculous but somehow compelled to speak. The temperature around him dropped suddenly. His breath came out in white puffs. And then he heard it, a woman's voice, weak but grateful. "Thank you." Patrick stumbled backward, his flashlight flickering. But there was no one there, just a headstone and the medication he'd left behind. When he returned to the pharmacy, the computer system was going haywire. Dozens of delivery requests were flooding in, all for Willowbrook Cemetery. The names were different, but the message was the same. People who had died in pain, waiting for relief that never came. Patrick spent the rest of the night filling prescriptions and making trips to the cemetery. Each time, he'd place the medication on the grave, whisper an apology, and feel that strange drop in temperature. Sometimes he'd hear voices, soft thank yous, blessings, words of peace. By dawn, he was exhausted but oddly satisfied. The computer had finally gone quiet. Betty found him asleep at his desk when she came in for the morning shift. "Patrick, what are you doing here? Your shift ended hours ago." "I was making deliveries," he said groggily, "to the cemetery. All those people who never got their final prescriptions." Betty's face went pale. "Patrick, we don't deliver to cemeteries. We never have." She pulled up the overnight logs. According to the system, Patrick had filled 37 prescriptions during his shift, all for patients who had been dead for decades. But the inventory showed no medications missing. "This is impossible," Betty whispered. "These people, I remember some of them. They died before their final prescriptions were ready." "But Patrick, you can't have actually." "I helped them," Patrick said simply. "They were in pain. They'd been waiting so long." Betty stared at him with a mixture of fear and pity. "Patrick, I think you should go home. Take a few days off. We'll figure this out." But Patrick never came back. His apartment was empty, his belongings gone. The only trace of him was a note on his desk at the pharmacy. "Some deliveries are more important than others. The night shift never really ends. P." The strange thing was, after Patrick disappeared, the midnight delivery requests stopped coming. The computer system worked perfectly. No more glitches. But sometimes on quiet nights, Betty would find flowers on her desk. Fresh flowers that smelled like cemetery soil. And if you drove past Willowbrook Cemetery on certain nights, you might see a figure moving between the headstones, carrying a white pharmacy bag, still making deliveries to patients who had waited far too long for their final dose of peace. Donald had been working security at the Meridian Business Complex for 3 years. 12-hour night shifts. For days a week. It wasn't glamorous, but paid the bills and kept him busy while his wife Michelle worked her day job as a nurse. The building housed various offices, accounting firms, law practices, a small medical clinic on the 3rd floor. Nothing exciting ever happened there. Until that Tuesday night in October. It was 11:47 p.m. when Donald began his routine patrol. The building's heating system always made strange noises at night, pipes expanding and contracting, the old elevator shaft settling. He'd grown accustomed to these sounds, but tonight something felt different. The air itself seemed heavier, more oppressive. Donald's flashlight beam cut through the darkness as he made his way to the third floor. The medical clinic always gave him the creeps. Something about the sterile smell and the way the empty examination rooms looked like mouths gaping open in the darkness. He was about to turn back when he heard it. A soft scraping sound coming from Dr. Harrison's office. "Hello? Building security," Donald called out, his voice echoing down the empty hallway. The scraping stopped. He approached the office door slowly. The nameplate read, Dr. Harrison, pediatric psychiatrist. Donald tried the handle, locked, as it should be, but the sound had definitely come from inside. He pressed his ear against the door and heard something that made his blood run cold. A child's voice, barely audible, humming a lullaby. Rock-a-bye baby in the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. Donald's hands trembled as he fumbled for his keys. Dr. Harrison had been on vacation for 2 weeks. There was no way anyone should be in that office, especially not a child. The humming continued, growing slightly louder. He unlocked the door and pushed it open. The office was empty, chairs neatly arranged, desk clean, filing cabinets locked. But the temperature in the room was at least 20 degrees colder than the hallway. Donald's breath came out in visible puffs as he swept his flashlight across the room. That's when he saw the drawings. Scattered across Dr. Harrison's desk were dozens of crayon drawings. Stick figures of children with enormous black eyes and mouths open in silent screams. At the bottom of each drawing, in a child's handwriting, were the words, "Help us, Donald. Don't let him take us to the quiet room." Donald's radio crackled to life with static. Through the white noise, he could swear he heard children whispering his name. The humming started again, but now it was coming from the walls themselves, multiple voices, all different ages, all singing that same horrifying lullaby. He bolted from the office, slamming the door behind him, but as he ran toward the stairs, he could hear more voices joining the chorus. The sound followed him down the hallway, growing louder with each step. Children's voices, pleading, crying, all saying the same thing. "Don't leave us here, Donald. Don't let him come back." Donald never worked another night shift. When he tried to tell his supervisor about the incident, he discovered that Dr. Harrison had lost his license 15 years ago following allegations of child abuse. The office had been empty ever since, or so everyone thought. These 3 stories share a common thread: the vulnerability of those who work while the world sleeps. Donald, Justin, and Patrick were all just trying to make a living, to provide for their families, to get through another night. But they discovered that some places hold on to their darkness, and that darkness is always hungry for company. The next time you're driving past an empty office building at midnight, or sitting in a 24-hour diner, or visiting someone in a pharmacy during the quiet hours, remember these stories. Remember that the night shift workers you encounter might be fighting battles you can't see, against forces you can't understand. If these stories sent chills down your spine, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments which one terrified you the most. Don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling tales from the shadows. We post new horror stories every day. Share this with someone who's brave enough to handle the fear. And remember, the night shift is never as lonely as it seems. Sweet dreams, everyone. See you in the darkness.